the Forward, okay, Jewish newspaper, and they were talking about his friendship with Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Yeah, they're real good friends.
Scalia. They're extremely good friends. They celebrate the two couples celebrate New Year's together. They go on vacations together. They go to the opera. Okay. And they said one lesson that the Republicans and the Democrats can learn is that as polarized as they are when they sit on the bench, when they leave the chambers of the Supreme Court, they leave the job at the job. They don't talk politics. They talk about things they like. They talk about family and music, you know, and they have the same wit, the same sense of humor, and it's something that we can take a lesson from. All of us, you know, Democrats, Republicans, everybody, you know, leave the problems or the differences at work. Don't bring them home with you, okay? And, you know, it's like when you think about Thanksgiving or Christmas dinners or Rosh Hashanah dinners or Passover dinners, you know, you think about the discussions that families have, and it always turns to either religion or politics. Two things you should never discuss, because all that does is divide people. It causes arguments, you know?
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to hopefully play a little parts. You could hear this.
Oh, what, parts of his speeches?
No, but no, CNN, when they were talking about, I don't know if this is the part I was talking about.
It took Joel Silverman years
of course, there's always a commercial first.
Good job. But only a few commands to master.
Can you hear that okay?
At JCTNs.
Yeah.
Technology designed for you, so you can easily master.
Do we get paid for these commercials?
The justices unanimously handed over a big win to Congress. It's a big defeat for the White House. This has been a power tug of war between the legislative branch and the executive branch for years. You know, a lot of people might not understand that the president has the constitutional authority to temporarily appoint people to very prominent positions. We're talking cabinet members. We're talking board members, judicial positions. And in this specific case, the president appointed 3 people to the National Labor Board when Congress was supposed to be in recess. However, the Senate Republicans did a legislative maneuver called a pro forma session. So they claimed that they were actually in session when the president made those appointments, and therefore they were invalid. And today, the justices agreed with the Senate Republicans, saying that the 3 people the president appointed to the National Labor Board doesn't count, essentially, because the Senate was in session because of this legislative maneuver they employed. However, important to note here that the justices didn't take away the constitutional authority for the president to appoint people when Congress is in recess. The president can still do that, but not when they're in this pro forma session. And this, of course, raises the larger question, Carol, can the Senate Republicans just stay in session all year round to hold up the nominations that the president wants to go through? And also, you know, what's going to happen to all the decisions that the 3 members of the National Labor Board made when the president appointed them?
And I'll bet you didn't know that she's talking to Carol Costello.
One of many pieces in my life. So when my asthma symptoms kept coming back on my long-term control medicine, I talked to my doctor.
I'm giving away 1 second.
Once daily Brio prevents asthma symptoms. Brio's for adults with
just
asthma
want to
not well
close
controlled
the,
on a long-term asthma control medicine,
music.
like an inhaled corticosteroid. Brio won't replace a rescue inhaler for...
I'm tired of giving him free airtime, you know?
I know. She was talking to Carol Costello. See, I bet you didn't even realize that I knew who she was talking to.
See that?
Because I watch CNN as well, and I also watch Fox.
Yeah. Well, this was an older story. I was, you know, because I just try to...
Yeah, well, it has to do with judicial appointments or labor appointments that were made, and none were made now, so it had to be like a few years ago, you know, but it's very interesting. I never knew that. and keeping the Senate open for work as a pro forma, maneuver, so that even though they're not working, technically they are working. So the president can't appoint anybody.
But they said during the time when the turnover of the president and the Congress, somewhere around that time, there is a recess that they have to have, and he could technically do it then. But
they have to. Well, that's because in an even numbered year, when you elect the president, every 4 years, you're also electing congressmen and congresswomen, representatives to the House of Representatives.
Yep.
So, you get new people coming in, old people have to move out, the new people have to move in because they're all sworn in, at the same time.
Right. See, and they may be sworn in a little earlier than the president or something, but there's a period there where he could do it. Yeah, but they said that would really be pretty nasty him if he did it. And it would mean he would have to hold off trying to appoint somebody to the last minute.
Well, I can't answer for for this Congress. This Congress has the lowest approval rating of any Congress that I could ever remember. And nobody wants to reach across the aisle to do anything, and that's why it was so refreshing, during the debates, or if you listen to Governor Kasich when he's being interviewed by reporters and journalists, whether he's in the spin room or not, and he says that the American people are getting tired of all this bickering. They want representatives, senators, congressmen, to learn to work together to get something done, because your favorite line is when people don't vote, you send the same people back to the Congress and the Senate, and they don't do anything.
90% of the time, the same people return. 10% approval rating, 90% return, because people are afraid. People are afraid to make a change.
And just look at after the debate. All right, today, first of all, I was very upset with CNN last night, because was it last night? No, it was Saturday night after the debate, because all the reporters are in the spin room, and they try to interview as many of the candidates as they possibly can. And CNN was Hallie Jackson was interviewing John Kasich, and she broke away. Why did she have to break away? Because one of the other CNN interviewers had Donald Trump. They give this guy so much airtime. And he himself says, I don't have to spend any money, hardly any money, because you people are putting me on the air. Yeah. Every function that he ever does is covered by everybody.
Yeah, it's true. And you can't blame him. You can't blame him for that.
No, I don't.
I'm just saying,
if somebody's going to give you airtime for free, even though of all the candidates, he's the one that could afford to pay. Why not take advantage of it? But on Saturday night, did you catch the debate or?
Yeah, most of it, I think.
I got to tell you, it was vitriolic. It was the mean spirit between. We know about Trump and Jeb. And with everything, according to CNN, they said Jeb Bush polled the worst after the debate. He, it was, I believe it was Rubio scored the highest, then Trump, then Kasich, then Cruz, and then Carson and Bush. You know.
I don't know. I didn't hear that, so I'll take your word for it. Even though I didn't think he did that badly.
Who? Bush?
Yeah.
Well, you know, one of Gloria Borger on CNN said, and in a way it's true, you know, the Bush family, very political. We know that, you know, from the father, even George W., you know, two-term president, one-term president, you know, and, well, the father was a one-term and George was two.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Bush likes to press Jeb's buttons. He knows exactly what gets him infuriated and upset.
Trump does.
And yeah, he trumps him. Yeah, exactly. And he does it on purpose.
Of course.
And Jeb doesn't know when to back away because, you know, in the spin room, one of the politicians was, one of the journalists happened to say to the chairman of the Democratic Committee in South Carolina, you know, who happened to be attending, and he said, the journalist said, "Boy, this is like high school," and the Democratic chairperson from South Carolina said, "No, this is middle school." He said, "This is like 11, 12, and 13-year-olds they're behaving. You know, everybody's trying to get the last word in. He says something about me, I'm going to say something about him."
Yeah. It's that 30-second rebuttal they give him. They just go
and what do they do?
Forth.
They wind up spending, you know, 15 to 20 minutes of their rebuttal time saying something nasty about them, and they don't bother to address the issues, you know. And of course, Ben Carson, you know, I'm just waiting for him to drop out. I don't know why he's still in the race, really. You know, I really have no idea why he's still in the race.
I can't say.
You know. By the way, before we get into anything else, I got a text from Chad today.
Yeah.
And I told him, he said it was a good show on Friday. Now, I don't even know if he listened to it, because the bottom line is, I said, yes, we had a very nice exchange at the end with this gentleman from Mississippi. And he says, what gentleman? You know?
Yeah.
So I said to him that this gentleman would very much like to speak with you, and I told him that you were going to be on, not this coming Friday, but the 26th. You know, so he said he's going to try to, he said most definitely he's going to try to be on. He can't do it this week because he has the Bible class. But he said the week after, on the 26th, I just hope this guy from Mississippi calls in.
Yeah, I don't know.
You know? I mean, I have no idea who he is.
No.
But, you know, so anyway, and, you know, so I just figured I'd share that with you, you know.
Have we heard from Elisa at all?
Chad had asked, I told Chad that Elisa's friend is going through some personal problems, family problems, and, you know, because Chad said he really wants to have a discussion with a Catholic, you know, somebody who's well-versed in Catholicism, so they can exchange views and have like a war of words, so to speak.
Right.
And I told him about, you know, Elisa's friend, but I did tell him, look, I said, let me contact Elisa to find out if I can give you her cell number. So Elisa said, sure, why not? So I gave Chad Elisa's cell number so they can text, you know, back and forth or call, I don't know. You know, maybe somebody else from her church would, you know, come on and sort of debate with him, have a good theological debate on some Friday,
Yeah.